Hi, and welcome to the Radical series. Today, we are going to talk about how we can make our vulnerability our strength. Now, whether we agree or not, a lot of us at some given point of time do feel vulnerable. It could be financially, some of us could feel physically, emotionally, or with their health, even spiritually. And most of us hate feeling vulnerable because we feel that if we are vulnerable and we express our vulnerability, people will take advantage of it. They might hurt us, they might exploit us, they might ridicule us, they might judge us, and sometimes even the fear that they might make fun of us. And so, what we do is we do not like to express our vulnerability. And then the most natural way that we do is we defend ourselves. So, we wear this mask. The mask is a defense mechanism where we are trying to safeguard ourselves without realizing what we really are doing. So, some of us will defend ourselves by walling up. Some may maybe become very aggressive. Some people behave exactly the opposite. So, you might be actually feeling hurt because of a close friend or because of something your partner said. But instead of expressing yourself, you might actually act very indifferent. That, oh, I don't care, and I'm above all this. And so you start wearing different masks. Now, what happens when you wear these masks or you actually try and defend yourself? What do you think would happen? Even though somewhere you feel that that's the best thing to do and you are safeguarding yourself from being hurt and all that, but what really does happen? So, what really happens is that you somewhere give a fake impression of what you are feeling. Like supposing if you're hurt and you're portraying to be indifferent, so you give a fake impression of your feeling. And then what happens is that people get misguided by that impression that you are kind of portraying. So most of them then with that kind of misguided thought process, what they do is instead of actually trying to take care of you or trying to safeguard your vulnerability, what they do is they can actually feel intimidated or indifferent also. And that will make you further vulnerable because they don't really know what you are actually feeling. So that is maybe not the most appropriate thing because somewhere then instead of responding to your vulnerability, they start reacting to you. And that creates that loop again. We also don't realize that sometimes we make these invisible walls around us, which are these invisible barriers. And we do them subconsciously because we don't want people to hurt us when we don't want to express our vulnerability. Now, what happens is that because of that invisible wall, you not only prevent the hurt from coming in, but if that wall is there, you also prevent the love, the care, the support, and everything else to come in. So somewhere you don't even allow yourself to feel love, to feel loved, to be loved, and so you do not enjoy that intimacy in a relationship. So if you look around and you see whether it was your husband, your wife, your um, girlfriend, boyfriend, whoever, and you don't feel that intimacy, is it? Are you able to have the courage to express and acknowledge your vulnerability with them, or you're too fearful? And then because of that, maybe you're actually not experiencing that kind of fulfillment and that kind of love that kind of support and that kind of care, because maybe that other person does not even know what you're going through. A lot of us might want others to imagine and understand what they're going through, irrespective of what we portray. And that is tough and somewhere not fair for the other person. So, how do we address this? Because we rather experience all that we are meant to receive and experience, which is love and support and protection and everything. And sometimes, very interestingly, when we wear so many masks of defending our vulnerability, we even forget when and how we are feeling vulnerable. So that's the irony. Now, we need to understand somewhere that everything in the universe is relatively vulnerable. Even a big monument is vulnerable to the natural forces of the earthquake or the cyclone. So everything is like that. Now, we somewhere need to deepen and develop that faith that when we recognize and acknowledge our vulnerability, the universal mechanism will definitely safeguard us, take care of us, protect us. Look around in nature and you'll see this, the way this is being applied. So all that is acknowledging their vulnerability. They are divinely protected. Look at how snails have those shells and how certain animals have thorns as a universal way of protecting them. Or you have animals that can camouflage. It's like, the grass blade, if you see a huge storm, even the grass blade can kind of bend when the storm is there. It's like acknowledging its vulnerability, and when the storm is over, it comes back. It's like that resilience. So, actually expressing your vulnerability teaches you resilience. So, somewhere you need to have faith in the universal mechanism that when you recognize and acknowledge that you're vulnerable, you will be taken care of, you will be safeguarded, you will be protected. It's when we do not recognize and acknowledge, we kind of give out misleading signals to even the universe and to everyone around us. I'll give a metaphor. It's like think about and be like that baby who is so okay with their vulnerability that they are completely divinely taken care of, protected in absolutely full faith. And interestingly, when you do that, you also invite other people to start coming forward to take care of what you're truly feeling. So, if I have to step by step summarize it, the first thing we do is we recognize and we acknowledge our vulnerability. Second is we work with our guilt of making other people feel vulnerable, maybe in our past or past life. Third is we work with our fears. What are your fears? What will happen? So work with R5 technique with all your fears so that you can neutralize it. Then you work with your list of all your beliefs, your adverse associations you have with being vulnerable and expressing it. So, like a lot of people can have the belief that if you are that you'll get hurt, you will be exploited, you will be taken advantage of. So, we need to work with these beliefs to somewhere neutralize it. Because interestingly, we think that when we will express ourselves, people will take advantage of it. But it's not because we're expressing a vulnerability that people take advantage. It's our belief system that the belief system that people will take advantage if we are vulnerable, and that is what we exactly manifest. People respond to our beliefs and make sure that whatever you're thinking is right. I know it sounds simple sometimes, but that is the truth and the secret of actually living a more holistic and a fulfilled life. So we work with all the adverse associations and the beliefs. Then, very importantly, we work towards discovering the courage within us to be able to express our vulnerability. Trust me, it's only a strong person and a person who knows and has faith in their inner strength actually will have the courage to drop down their guards and drop down their defenses. A true strong person only can do that. When you're too fearful and somewhere you don't have the courage, then you'll always keep those invisible barriers there around you. You will not be able to drop them. So discover that courage. And not only discover the courage, you need to somewhere deepen your faith in the universal mechanism. So work with your resistance to have faith, to have that full, complete faith in the universal mechanism that anything that is okay to acknowledge that they are the vulnerable ones will be taken care of, will be safeguarded, and will be taken care of in an absolute divine way. So let us all try to drop those defenses which are actually not helping us feel that joy and that love and that intimacy that we are actually seeking for. It's like, we all want to feel love from our close relationships, but we just do not know why we don't feel it. So, this is an essential factor because of which you might not be feeling it. Or even sometimes when you can achieve so much in your life, it's that fear that somewhere sabotages you. So, let us work with some R5 statements today to address it. So, I request you to close your eyes and center yourself and repeat with me. I R5 my fear of my vulnerability. I R5 my fear of being vulnerable. I R5 my fear of being vulnerable. I R5 my need to recognize my vulnerability. I R5 my need to recognize my vulnerability. I R5 my need to recognize my vulnerability. I recognize my need to I R5 my need to acknowledge my vulnerability. I R5 my need to acknowledge my vulnerability. I R5 my need to acknowledge my vulnerability. I R5 my guilt of making others feel vulnerable in the past. I R5 my need to I R5 my guilt of making others feel vulnerable in the past. I R5 my guilt of making others feel vulnerable in the past. I R5 my fears related to being vulnerable. I R5 my fears being related to being vulnerable. I R5 my fears of being vulnerable. I R5 my adverse beliefs about being vulnerable. I R5 my adverse beliefs of being vulnerable. I R5 my adverse beliefs of being vulnerable. I R5 my association of vulnerability with getting hurt. I archive my association of vulnerability with getting hurt. I archive my association of vulnerability with getting hurt. I archive my association of vulnerability with getting exploited. I archive my association of vulnerability with getting exploited. I archive my association of vulnerability with getting exploited. I archive my need to be courageous. I archive my need to be courageous. I archive my need to be courageous. I archive my resistance to have full faith in the universal mechanism of safeguarding the universal one. I archive the reluctance to have full faith in the universal mechanism of safeguarding the vulnerable one. I archive the resistance to have full faith in the universal mechanism of safeguarding the vulnerable ones. I archive my need to have full faith. I archive my need to have full faith. I archive my need to have full faith. I archive my need to make my vulnerability my strength. I archive my need to make my vulnerability my strength. I archive my need to make my vulnerability my strength. And the final affirmation for today is, I make my vulnerability my strength. I make my vulnerability my strength. I make my vulnerability my strength.